Come on now. Yeah. It's us against everybody fool. Nothing but the bulls. Nothing but the bulls. It's us against everybody. Y'all should know the rules. Nothing but the bulls. Nothing but the bulls. Live from the Madhouse on Madison, between Damon and Ashland. You see a team of warriors in black with red with some white accents, ready for action. For any set of 18 ballers claiming they active, y'all better ask them LA boys what really happened. It don't matter home or away, we catching y'all lacking. Why you laughing? Think it's all get easy. We send Josh from half court to get busy. We rise quickly because our city never cower. Be like treating family tree and send us all our flowers. Send them to the locker room, crying in the shower. The way we pull it up, section 25th hours. It's us against everybody, we the crown jewel. Nothing but the bulls, nothing but the bulls.
I'm doing the very best, baby.
What's up, Bulls Nation? Welcome to a new episode of the Nothing But Bull podcast. Real fans, all Bulls, no bullshit. I'm your host, Young Jordan. As always, I'm with my co-host, John and SeeRed. Together, we are the Bulls Bros. And today, we have a special guest. Our guy, Stacy, always referred to him as the hardest working man in show business. You've seen him calling MLB, NFL, probably seen him DJing on a boat. But we know and love him as the voice of our Chicago Bulls, the one and only Amin. Adam.
What's going on, man?
Right. Yes.
I appreciate you guys, man. Great to see you. Great to talk to you, man. I miss you guys. It's been a bit.
Yeah, man.
Likewise.
Been a couple months, but yeah, definitely great to have you here. And thank you for coming on to do this.
Of course.
Adam is getting a lot of love already in the comments.
Oh, this is awesome, man. I appreciate you guys.
Okay, there we go. I wasn't seeing the comments. Now they're popping up. DJ Adam. That's right.
No, I appreciate you guys, man.
Adam.
Missy, Danny.
Brendan.
What's going on, brother?
Over.
All the way from Australia. He set his alarm just to watch this. So that means a lot, Brendan. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Appreciate
That's
you. That's
awesome.
Man, it's like 8 a.m. out there or something right now. So
Yeah, that's what he said. 8 a.m. Yeah. So
I appreciate that, man.
that is awesome.
Danny said he needs to catch up on a set from DJ Adam.
I'm trying to post those things, man. I'm trying to post them and put them online. So
Nice.
can take a listen to them hopefully one of these days.
Awesome.
So, for those who don't know, if you're familiar with the game of 21 questions here on Nothing But Bulls, obviously, for good reason, it's 23 questions. So, John and myself are going to ask Adam a total of 23 questions, covering broadcasting, the Bulls, and of course, our late friend Stacey King. And I'm sure there will be some questions also in the audience because our viewers tend to ask very good questions as well.
A lot of great questions. Yes. Shout out to them.
Melissa says, catch DJ Adam at Boss Bar.
We ran into each other at Boss Bar when I was out there DJing a couple of weeks ago. So it was great to see Melissa and some of the crew. And no, I appreciate it. It's always nice to see people out in the wild. You know, like I think there's a lot of obviously there's a lot that connects us because we're, you know, close to the team in some capacity. Whether you're a fan, you've been watching them your whole life, like I have. You know, you live here now. You like the team. You like the NBA, or you're a fan of Stacey's, or whatever the reason might be. So it's cool to see people actually out in the wild once in a while too. So I feel like we get to interact like in the context of the team a lot more, but it's nice to just kind of out in a vacuum be able to see people and say hello. So it makes me happy.
Ramina says, what's up, Adam?
Ramina, what's going on?
I appreciate it.
Melissa says you were killing it on the set out there.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Oh, great. So 23 questions.
Let's do it.
Number one, when you first got the Bulls job, take me back to what did becoming the voice of the team mean to you personally?
I mean, I cried when they told me that I was getting the job full time. You know, a lot of people remember that starting with the 2018-2019 season, Neil was stepping away from the road games mostly. To start off, he kind of wanted to scale back a little bit. So, you know, Stacey would always tell the story about how he had to work with, you know, 17, 18, 19 different people. Sometimes the number goes up a little bit too. But he would tell the story about how the Bulls were basically auditioning play-by-play announcers for, you know, a couple of years. But, you know, the part that I don't tell very often just because hasn't really come up. After a year of that, where they had all those people coming in and a lot of incredibly talented people, especially like Lisa Byington's doing the NBA for the Bucks now. John Sadak's the voice of the Cincinnati Reds. Our guy Jason Benetti, who's, you know, still a close friend. He's up, you know, obviously doing his thing with NBC now and working with the Tigers, and you know, he's doing NBA playoff games for NBC too. Like, he's killing it. It's a lot of talented people. JB Long's the voice of the LA Rams. So all of us, you know, among others, had this great opportunity to fill in and get some NBA experience. I was doing NBA at the time for ESPN when I started filling in. So I had a little bit of working knowledge of the league. I had reps. I had called playoff games for 2 seasons on TV and radio at that point, because I would do the first round, a couple of games on TV, and then I would do the rest of the playoffs, second and third round on radio. I'd do the conference finals, and then I would be done, and somebody else would go do the NBA finals. But I had a lot of NBA experience, and I got to be one of the first people. I was the first person to fill in basically with Stacey. And after that year, after that first season, they called me in, the Bulls did. And I was in there at the Advocate Center meeting with some of the executives, and they said, we're still gonna have people fill in. You know, Neil is only gonna do so many games, but this is gonna be Neil's last season. And when the season's over, when next season comes around, we'd like to have you come on as the full-time voice. And that was a shocker, because I didn't know that was really ever a possibility. You know, I always just kind of pictured in my head Neil was just going to be there forever. You know, like, we don't really think about time that way, you know, and I think this off season was obviously another reminder of that, you know, with losing our friends. So I think, like, the emotion that hit me, I cried. I was in the room with my agent, and they told me, and I was holding it in. I basically said immediately of yes. Like, both my agent and I were like, yeah, absolutely, whatever you want us to do, and we'll figure it out. And then he and I left the Advocate Center, walked like 2 blocks down the street so nobody would see us, and I just gave him a big hug, and I started crying, and I it was really emotional. And then I did that year as a fill-in, and then COVID hit, and then it was just kind of this weird, you know, I didn't know what the season. I don't know if we were going to play an NBA season after that. And obviously, I'm so thankful that, you know, we got to go back to it and everything. And I took over that strange, you know, 2021 season. But then a year later is when it really felt like it sunk in, when we got back in the arena and fans were there. And that was the Lonzo Ball year. You know, the first, you know, 50 games were so fun. But it was an emotional time over the course of a couple of years, just kind of wondering if I could, then getting it, then not knowing what it was going to feel like, and then getting to do it full time. It's been incredible, and it's been one of the great turning points of my life.
Definitely great to have you as taking over for Neil. I remember John in that game in DC where he's just coming up. He's like, no.
I know you got to remember that.
Of course. Of course.
Yep. So I was I was disappointed because the night before we were playing at the Garden, and I was trying to get close to you and Stacey, and security wouldn't let me go. I couldn't get close to you. You would have thought I was trying to get into the White House.
Yeah.
I couldn't get close to you. Yeah. So I was already upset about the night before. Also, we lost that game. It was a very close game. And then, you know, taking the bus back to DC, I'm drinking the whole time, literally the whole time. And so I'm excited to see you all. But I'm also excited to see Derek for the very first time, because there have been so many times in my social media meetups, like, hey, let's meet up at the game. and the individual's MIA. I'm like, oh, am I being catfished? Like, what's going on? And I saw Derek, I'm like, whoa, he's real. Derek's real. You know? So it was an unbelievable. It was a culmination of excitement. And then, got to meet you for the first time. And yeah, my man, that's very true. Huge Neil Funk fan, grew up listening to him. But man, I got to tell you, you've definitely brought in new energy. You and Stacy together, it was a different energy, and it really culminated with, the year before, like you said, was weird with COVID and everything. Fans weren't really in the arena, but Lonzo Ball comes in, Alex Caruso, DeMar DeRozan, and just changes the team. It looks like, man, we're number one in the East. At the All-Star break, we're looking great. But no, that was definitely a great moment.
Yeah, that was fun to be able to witness that too, like from the outside. That was cool.
Yeah, well, hope I didn't scare you away. You were cool enough about it.
Still friends all these years later, man.
That's right. So that was several years ago. Now that you've been around calling the Bulls, is it exactly what you imagined it would be at this point?
No, I don't think so. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what it was going to be like to be on the road, covering a beat, basically. I kind of did this in reverse in a way. I think a lot of broadcasters who are coming up in this business for a long time, they would start at a local level, right? On a local job somewhere. Maybe they worked in local radio, or they got a job as like the broadcaster for a team or something like that. And then maybe they work their way up, and then a national outlet gets wind of them. And that still happens all the time. Like my guy, Michael Grady, who's, has been the voice of the Minnesota Timberwolves for the last few years. That's how he did it, man. He was in Brooklyn. He was the reporter. He was the fill-in play-by-play guy. Then he gets the Minnesota job, and now he's blowing up on Amazon and NBC, and he's killing it on NBA and WNBA. And I'm like, that still happens a lot in this business, but I did it a little bit in reverse. I was a national announcer. I was doing college sports mostly for the first, couple of years of my career. Then I started to do NFL and Major League Baseball on the radio. Then I got the NBA opportunities, and like I built it up on the national side, and I didn't really picture a local job. And I had offers. I've had offers in my life to, like, the LA Rams offered me, had interest in me, the Oklahoma City Thunder, for their TV job at one point. I was in discussions with them, and it wasn't the right fit. I was like, I would love a job like that someday if the situation were right, but I loved the gig that I was doing. I was at ESPN. I was doing all the NBA, and I had NFL. I've been doing NFL for, 15 seasons now, going back to my radio days. So I loved my gig, and I didn't want to give it up for just to add a local job. And like I said, I meant it. I didn't think the Bulls job was like a real job. Because in my head, you grow up with it's Jim Durham, it's Neil Funk, it's Tom Dorr, it's Wayne Larrabee, it's Red Kerr, it's Stacy, Bill. Like, you just kind of have these people anchored in these positions in your head as a fan. And like, as a professional, I know everybody is replaceable. I'm replaceable. And I think everybody in this profession, like, I can do anything they want to do. But I just didn't picture the Bulls job ever being a real thing. So I still get surprised by it. I have found a nice rhythm for it. But, it's going to be different this year too. And it's going to be different the rest of the time doing this job. So I never know what to expect. I've never really known what to expect. I can find some rhythm and some like comfort in that rhythm. But for the most part, like, this is still a job that brings you something different most nights. And that's cool, man. That keeps your energy up. That keeps you intrigued. That keeps you dialed in, because it's not the same every night. And that's what's great about it.
That's right.
Yeah. Speaking of rhythm, we know as you found your rhythm with the Bulls, you found your rhythm with DJing. So I want to know which is harder for you to get yourself up for, a random Bulls game in late February, or going and having to do a DJ set right after a Bulls loss?
It'd be hard to do it after a Bulls loss. The last time I did a DJ set after a Bulls game was when they beat the Knicks last Halloween. So they started that was the 5-0 start. And that was really exciting on a Friday night. They beat the Knicks. My girlfriend and I rushed to this Halloween party that I was DJing at, and then the next day I fly to go do my NFL game or whatever. So that was the last. Like, I had a good experience the last time. It's hard. I've had to do it after a Bulls loss. It's not as fun, but the nice thing is it's kind of separate. You know, I can separate those two things, and it's two different performances, and it's two different energies. And I think the other part is, like, it sometimes does get hard to cover a game in, you know, after the All-Star break when they maybe lost a few in a row. And you guys know the last few seasons haven't been the most successful. So there are stretches of time where they're just not playing well. And in particular, this past season after the trade deadline, when you have, you know, you lose all these players that you're like close to in a way. Like, I would never tell you I'm friends with this player, I'm friends with that player. I like to have some separation. I want them to do their job. I want myself to be able to do my job. But it's inevitable, man. Like, you become close with these people. Like, when Alex Caruso sees us, you know, in Oklahoma City now, like, he comes over and daps us up. DeMar DeRozan. I got close to DeMar because he was one of the few people, because he was around my age. You know, I'm 39. And he's one of the older players. I got along with him really well. I got along with Nikola Vucevic really well because they're a little older and they have families and they have experience and wisdom that some of the younger guys just aren't going to have yet. And that's okay. They'll have that eventually. But like, you get close to people and you become fond of them, I think is a great way to say it. So like, that's not fun to lose out on that. But I think you look for something that's a hook every single night. And at the very least, from the television side, I think all those changes lead to new opportunities for storytelling. We got to tell the story of Colin Sexton and how intense he is and where that comes from. We got to talk about the development of Rob Dillingham. Like, Stacey, like, called for Leonard Miller to be in the game and be in the lineup more often. Look what happened. This kid took full advantage of his opportunities. And like, there is joy in that. There is joy in that storytelling, even if the team isn't particularly good. And, you know, my prediction for this year right now in general is kind of like, I think they'll be very entertaining. I think the Norman Powell quote was pretty telling. Like, we have the opportunity to be really good or really bad. And that doesn't mean that's what it's going to be. I think he thinks it's going to be somewhere in the middle, which is what I think too. But I think it's going to be entertaining and that's going to be fun. And there are new faces and new players and new franchise cornerstones to talk about. And that allows us the opportunity to tell the story of Caleb Wilson, to tell the story of Modest a little bit deeper now that he's stepping even further into a bigger role. Like, that allows us opportunities, and that's what gets us up, even if the team's not playing great.
Shout out to Clem in the chat. He says, no matter how bad the Bulls were playing, Adam and Stacey made it fun. Adam is such an inspiration, and his ball knowledge is through the roof. We're so lucky as Bulls fans.
Appreciate y'all.
I second that.
Thanks, guys.
I've actually got a Stacey related question for you, Adam. You and Stacey developed a genuine friendship beyond just being broadcast partners. What do you miss most about your friend?
You know, there's a lot of big things that I miss and I'm going to miss. There's a lot of little things, though, that are starting to pop up more and more now. I'm sure you guys feel the same way, where like there was actually, I want to look it up real fast on my phone. So Mark Brady, obviously, we talk about him all the time. Mark's our fantastic producer on Bulls broadcasts. And we always had this text chain. You know, we have me, Stacey, and Mark. We have me, Stacey, Mark, and our director, Russ. We have me, Stacey, Mark, our director, and our graphics. Like, we have all these group chats going on. And we never talked about our broadcast, Stacey and I. We never were like, hey, let's talk about this, or this is what we want, what we're going to plan for tonight. Our production meetings were the texts, were just group chats. It was, if he was like, he saw some cool highlight reel on this young player, he would send that to us. And that would just be a trigger in my head to be like, well, that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about this at some point, because we were just talking about it on the group chat. So the other day, Don Nelson, passed away, the great Don Nelson. And, he is he had this great moment. I think it was with Steven Jackson in a press conference. where somebody was asking him, well, what have you been up to? And he's like, well, I've been smoking a lot of weed lately, and like was talking about how he was kind of a hippie, and he would smoke up with like his old players and things like that. So it's like just a funny, cool clip. That's a clip that I would have sent the whole group chat, right? I would have sent Stacy that at 8:30 in the morning when I'm waking up. I get my phone, I'm scrolling, I see that clip. It makes me laugh. I'm gonna text that to Brady and Stacy, and we're gonna have a laugh about that, right? And I caught myself because I hit share and I had typed in Stacy's name, and I was like, it was just one of those like small moments that like I haven't felt a lot of the small ones yet, and that was one of the small ones that I felt, and I was like, damn, that's a little thing that always made me so happy over the course of a full season, where we would just send each other bullshit or send each other funny stuff or send each other like bloopers or good highlights or even articles that like I read, or hey man, I read this thing. Like, again, we weren't planning our broadcast, we were just talking about basketball or stuff like that. And that'll be the thing I probably miss, like the little thing I miss the most, on top of all the big stuff of just the jokes and the laughs and all of that. Like, he was my friend, like, first and foremost. He became my friend. He entered my life from the time I started filling in, and the entity that he was faded away, because I grew up, as a broadcast student. I'm watching Neil and Stacy. I'm in college when Stacy stepped in as the full-time analyst. So I'm watching this as a broadcast student, and he was kind of an entity at that point. And then I met him and worked with him, and he was like, all right, well, now he's a partner. That's cool. He's a colleague. And then when I got the job and we were in the, studio together during COVID, or we were in our little kind of glass box at the United Center for the home games, separated by glass, but it's just the two of us in an empty arena, just calling the game. Like, that's when we became friends. And when we were able to go back out on the road and have dinners, and I'd go, the last few years I'd have a DJ set and Stacy would show up, or we'd go grab lunch during the summertime. And I got to know his family, and I got to know, his sons, and I got to know like the people that were close in his life. He introduced me to people all over basketball. Like, that was a huge deal for me. So those are the big things that I know I'm going to miss, but there's a lot of little things too.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. You know what? iPhone iMessages, you can pin your conversations, and
yeah,
Stacy's still pinned on mine.
Yeah.
No, when I got your number at the Celebration of Life, I kicked somebody out to pin you up there. So.
I took a spot up there.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'll take the spot, man. It's like MySpace top 8. Hopefully I didn't date myself too much by using that reference, but.
Yeah. So when you and Stacy first started working together, when did you realize that you guys had something special in the booth?
I honestly did feel it from the start, and I think that's a little bit cliched, I'm sure, but I legitimately felt it like out of the gate. Now, I didn't think it was going to blossom into a friendship or something like that, like the way that it did. I didn't know that I would get the job down the line, right? But when I showed up in Dallas for the first time, filling in for Neil, it was October 22nd, 2018. I had been in Oxford, Mississippi the day before. I was calling a college football game, and I drove to Memphis and then flew from Memphis to Dallas, and then I went to the hotel. And then the next day I was at the arena, and I walked in, and I showed up before the team, right? I'm nervous. I've done NBA. I've called LeBron James buzzer beaters in the playoffs. I had called the women's Final Four at this point, where there was, 2 buzzer beaters to win the national title. I've called major college football. I've called NFL. I've done a lot of major things in my career, but I couldn't remember the last time I was that nervous. But when the team arrived and Stacy walked into the arena, he saw me right away. He's like, "Are you Adam?" And like pointed at me, and like obviously he's pointing down at me because I'm short and he's obviously such a big dude. And I was like, and I was a little, for a split second, intimidated, like very short amount of time, because again, I'm nervous. This is, again, an entity to me, not a person yet, not a friend yet. And He's like, "Are you Adam?" I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm filling in for Neil. It's great to finally meet you. I'm such a fan." And he just gave me a big hug, and like it was a dap, and then I just got enveloped by him, and it felt comfortable. It just felt. I'm a hugger, as you guys know. I see people, I give them a hug, man. Like it's important to me. It's important for me to show people I care, or that they're important to me in some way, or that if they got nobody else, you got me for that moment. I always appreciate it, and he gave me this big hug, and I felt comfortable with him right there. I know it sounds a little strange, but I felt safe. I was like, he's not gonna let me like look stupid, like I think that I compare him to one of my mentors in college, the guy who was the broadcaster, who still is the broadcaster for Valpo football and basketball. His name's Todd Eichow. For years, Todd has worked with students as his analyst on the major network, on the college network for that school. He's seen every 21-year-old pimply-faced, high squeaky voice teenager trying to work their way into adulthood, sitting next to him trying to call a game. He has shepherded along a lot of people. And that's a service that he has done without any thanks, without any, commendation for it or anything like that. But he has my gratitude for it. And Stace, I feel the same way about Stace. Like he will always, always, always have my gratitude because he made me feel comfortable and confident and like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to have a good time. Just do your thing, which he told every broadcaster, which is not an easy thing for anybody to do. Like, hey, you do you and I'll figure it out. And that was the service that he did for all of us who filled in. And once we got into like the full-time gig, we picked it up. Like every time I would come back for a fill in, we'd pick up right where we left off before. And then when I got the job, he was so happy, and he had encouraged it. He had gone to Bulls broadcast executives after the first game that we did together and was like, that's my guy. And he auditioned with everybody and they all did wonderful work. And he was great with everybody, but I got the job because of him, and I hope I did a good enough job to, impress him and make him feel like I was a professional, but he got me the job, and, I'll be indebted to him forever for that. It was easy from day one. And I think that's why he felt strongly about it. And I'm thankful that it played out the way it did.
Myra says you were definitely a hugger. She was so nervous to meet you. You gave her the big hug.
I appreciate that, Amara. Thank you.
Melissa says Stacy and Adam, both guys have that energy, very welcoming, made everyone feel like friends already.
Oh yeah,
it's a gift, man. It's a gift for that he had that made it. I wrote about this when he passed. It's like that's a rare thing. It's a rare thing to have somebody that can be in any environment with any number of people from anywhere and make everybody feel like, hey, right here, like this is where you're supposed to be. That's a gift. And he had that. And that was a big deal for me.
And everyone in Bulls Nation, Michael Wilbon included, on a podcast said, you and Stacy made it to where we forgot how bad the Bulls were. Because
some of that was out of necessity. Some of that was out of necessity.
Could have done a better job, my friend.
Oh, thanks, man.
Clip says he remembers tweeting out at the time, all the guys who called games with Stacey Adam was his favorite to replace Neil Funk, even though the others were great as well.
He made you feel good about yourself. He made you feel confident in what you're doing, and that's like I said, man, that's a gift.
Shout out Guilty in the chat.
Guilty. Shout out to Guilty.
Derek and John, two amazing people. You couldn't be on the pod with two better people in Bulls Nation.
Appreciate that, Guilty. Appreciate that. Means a lot.
Definitely. He says, hey, I heard you're from Addison. I went to school at Willowbrook. You play Addison Trail. Shout
yes.
630.
I know Willowbrook well, District 88. It's right by a mosque I used to go to when I was younger. So like that's I know that area right by Willowbrook very well. And yeah, man, I still like being able to go back to Addison Trail and go back to my hometown and see people there, my old teachers and stuff. So now shout out to District 88, man.
Stacy could make anybody laugh. I think we all agree with that. What's a Stacy story that still immediately puts a smile on your face and to this moment makes you laugh again?
I mean, there's a bunch. I think the first time he had a running joke where we would get called into the principal's office because we were having maybe too much fun or we were joking around a little bit too much or whatever it may be. Again, you got to remember the team's not always great, right? Like the team was struggling at times, so we had to find our own fun. And I got so nervous that first year we were together, the COVID season, when our guy Big Mac, Mac down in Orlando, Florida, man, our guy. Shout out to Mac and D, his I hope they're still together. His lovely spouse. They were two incredibly kind people, but we got going on the jersey thing, and it wasn't meant to be a slight to him. It was just I remember going to Wrigley Field as a kid, or going to the South Side and going to the Sox game, and you had your vendors a couple blocks away from the ballpark with like the knockoffs, and I couldn't afford a real jersey, and I didn't really want a real jersey. But I like those knockoff shirts. So it always made me think that there'd be, like it would say Sox on the front, or like it would have the logo that would just be like a little off, or they had to, mark it up or something like that so they couldn't get sued for selling, the jersey or whatever like that. So it just reminded me of that. And then the joke about NyQuil Jordan or whatever got into my head. So we just had we had just this riff, and I felt bad because I think some people thought we were being mean to the guy, which I understand. So people were being they were coming to a person's defense, and I can totally appreciate that. But there was no ill will behind it, and you guys know that too about Stace. There was never any ill will behind, like if he ever ribbed you or joked around or roasted you a little bit. Like that's how we grew up. That's how I grew up, and it was easy for me to be the butt of the joke if that was the thing. Like I just took it as, like we would do snaps and stuff like that. So I always felt bad for our guy Mac, but we got a phone call that night, and we had to explain what was happening because it was a road game. So we were in studio, we weren't at the arena, and we had to explain ourselves to a couple of our bosses. And Stacy was like, "Man, we just got called into the principal's office for the first time." And he made me feel, I was so nervous about it because I'm like, well, I don't want to make a mistake that's gonna get somebody in trouble or get myself in trouble. And Stacy made me laugh about it and made me made me feel at ease. It's like, hey, nothing's gonna happen. We'll take care of it. And then we were like, well, what if we, bought him some stuff? We got him some real merch and all that. And the Bulls were like, yeah, we'd love to do that. That's no problem. They were cool about it eventually, but that's because they know Stacy and they knew that he never meant any harm and wasn't trying to be mean to anybody. But our first call into the principal's office, which was not the only one we ever got, that first one always makes me smile.
Yeah, that moment was definitely hilarious.
That was the highlight of the season.
In a very strange, scary at times year where the team wasn't particularly great, and we had to adjust to a lot of different elements to that season. That was one of the bright, funny, enjoyable moments. I'll look back on that down the line and feel very I'll always have a smile about that moment because I know where it was coming from. I know what type of person he is and how he was never wanted to be mean to anybody. He just the jersey thing was funny to us, and we just that was the first we always laughed, but that was the first big laugh that I think he and I shared on the air together. So I think that'll be one I always remember.
I think that'll also tie into this question because Stacey could take the broadcast somewhere completely unexpected. Was there ever a time where you were just sitting there okay, I guess we're doing this?
a lot, but it was never. I never had to question it though. The only thing I had to worry about was making sure we didn't go over the line or something like that. I just wanted to make sure we didn't we didn't get in trouble. And again, I didn't think we ever were. I don't think it's in either of our nature to say something that's so outlandish that we would harm somebody or get somebody in trouble. I just, that's not in our nature. But I just had to make sure we were still on this side of it, right? I got better at referencing it later as we got in together. You know, as I'd be like, oh, working blue tonight, I guess. You know, it's not. Hey man, it's only 9 o'clock. We're not ready for that material yet, or something like that. You know, like we would be able to joke about it a lot more as we went on. But I never had to worry about it. He's such a good broadcaster. He was a great entertainer for sure, and he is a great analyst, like game analyst. But he could do all of it on TV, in the structure, in the timing. He knew when you could get away from the game. He always knew when to put the focus back on the game. And like those are skills that he honed over a long period of time. And the fact that he was almost like the lead guy with Neil allowed him to explore that. And, you know, as much as I was the beneficiary of Neil's teachings and Neil's space, and Stacy learning how to basically be like a lead broadcaster from the analyst chair. So I got him at like his prime. Like I got Stacy at like his peak, where like he knows the game, he's an entertainer, he's funny, he's got a partner that's going to lean into that too. And I think I was the lucky one. I got very fortunate that I got Stacy at that. Just at the best possible time of his career, where he was like, I thought at his best for the years that we were together.
Yeah. You had a front row seat to what Stacy meant to Bulls fans. What do you hope people always remember about him beyond the catchphrases and basketball?
I hope that people realize there's a personal and a professional side to it. And on the professional side, I hope people recognize what we just talked about, that he was like in my estimation, an elite level analyst, like an elite level person in that chair who could entertain you, educate you, inform you, but do it in a way that was very digestible to anybody who was watching basketball, right? Like I have friends in my life, my family in my life that like, they don't know a ton about basketball. They like basketball, or they have a general understanding of it, or they've played it a little bit, but they don't understand like the NBA game. And Stacy could explain the game to somebody like them, and then he could explain a concept or nuance, or we could have a discussion in a way that like you would be sitting in like a master level course, and he could speak to that person as well about the game of basketball. And I hope people remember that he was more than a give me the hot sauce or KYP or any of the, you know, catchphrases that he made famous and comfortable and accessible. He made the game easy and comfortable and accessible for a lot of people. And he always did it with empathy. He never he always wanted to be on the player's side. He never took personal shots ever at players, at least as long as I worked with him. And he always had a good nature about him. So I hope that people realize that all of those are specifically honed skills to be in that chair. And I'll always appreciate like his acumen and his prowess in that position, because I think it's rare. Like it's going to be hard. It's hard to replace a great X's and O's analyst. It's hard to replace an entertaining person. It's very difficult in this business to find another Stacy who has all of those skills in his bag and works with everybody well at the same time. There's a lot of talented people who are also jerks. And the thing about Stacy is, which now leans more into the personal side of it, is that he was just like the biggest hearted dude, like in just, you know, talking about him, just how he accepted me and, you know, how kind he was to my family and to my partner and her son. And, you know, like that's the essence of him. It's that same thing that we talked about earlier, that like there are certain people that are endowed with this gift of making everybody feel comfortable and feel good and feel at ease. And that's the personal thing that I hope people remember more than anything else.
Definitely. Shot Brian Christopher in the chat. He says Stacy's insights on what players were doing right or wrong were pitch perfect. Swaggy McTorso says simple game.
Yeah.
Always like, you know, help the helper, because I feel like that applies to everything, not just basketball.
Yeah.
Life is, you know, help each other out, help the helper, and
Yeah, man,
everybody would be better off for it.
for sure.
And we've talked about how when you were in the process of succeeding Neil and Stacy went to bat and said, "That's my guy." Do you think that, or have you the Bulls told you like the process of finding the person that's going to be next for you? Will you have that same cachet where you can be like, "Yeah, that's the guy or that's the girl"?
I mean, I think there's an incredibly long list of talented people out there that would do a wonderful job here, that would be a great analyst, would be entertaining, would feel like your friend. I also understand that it's going to take some time to get to that point. Just the same way it was like with Neil, like I know I'm not naive enough to think that I was accepted by not everybody, but like by a good chunk. Like I feel very accepted by this fan base, and that's a testament to the fans. Like they have made me feel like I belong here. But I know I'm not naive. I know that a big reason for that is Stacy, and was Stacy, that he kind of gave me a certain level of credibility, and then to help get to open the door for me to earn my way. But he opened the door. Like I had to earn it, but he was the one that opened that door to allow that possibility to take place. And I think, that would be, I take that seriously. I don't necessarily want to be the only one to make a decision. I also don't think that you necessarily have to make a decision. If I don't know for sure what's going to happen this year, my best guess is that it's going to be a rotation of people. Just because it's the other difficult part of it is, man, it's hard to find a guy like Stacy that is going to do every game for you as well, other than when like, hey, he might get sick or something like that. But he did every game pretty much, outside of one or two here or there. And in a modern media landscape, everybody's got multiple jobs, right? Everybody's got multiple gigs. I have multiple gigs. Like I miss games. I miss 15 games, something like that, around that number during the year too, because I got to go do football or I got baseball or whatever it might be. So, it's harder in a modern media landscape when people are doing multiple things to line one person up that has all the credentials, that has all the same skill set, and those people are typically doing other things. So I think for the sake of a couple of elements, I think we'll probably end up seeing a rotation of people. Whoever the Bulls bring in, they're going to be good hires. They will be good people, whether they're connected to the Bulls, whether they're connected to Chicago. Maybe they don't have as deep of a connection, but hey, we want to give this person an opportunity. I think, it's the best way to go about it, because I also think fans need to get used to the idea of it too. That it's going to be hard. And if there is any, I'm going to say it here right now. If any fan walks up to me and says, I just can't watch it, I completely understand. You will not upset me, because I know where you're coming from. I know where that feeling comes from. And if it takes a while for you to get used to a different voice or a couple of different voices or a new format or whatever, like I totally get that. And I would never begrudge a fan for saying like, this isn't what I want right now or what I'm used to. I don't want to do this. I'll say it this way too. I don't necessarily want to do this job without Stacy. I'm going to do this job without Stacy because I love this job. And this is a job that means a lot to me personally and professionally. But if I had my choice, do you think I'd want to do it with that? I would have loved in a different world where Stacy and I would have walked out together, where we both would have decided maybe our contracts lined up, or maybe Stacy was getting towards the end of it. Like I had always pictured that he would just leave on his own terms, right? You always do. That's what you always think. And, obviously life gets in the way of that sometimes. But I think I would have loved to walk out and walk into the sunset with Stace and just say, hey, man, we both did it together and we loved it. And, we'll finish up together. But I'm going to do the job, and I'm going to do my very best work to try to make whoever, whether it's one person, whether it's 3 people, 5, 10, 20, 100, I don't care what it is. My job is to call the game, make the person next to me feel comfortable, enhance the moments when they're to be enhanced, work with our great crew, And hopefully at some point, and it doesn't have to be game one, it doesn't have to be season one after Stacey. Hopefully at some point you go, you know what? I would like to watch this again, and I know it's going to be a little different, and it's not going to be my guy, the guy that I grew up with, or the guy that I've been watching, or the guy that my kids like to listen to or imitate, or my friend or my buddy or whatever. It might be, a combination of people, but hopefully at some point you'll be like, you know what? I want to watch it again. I want to watch again. I like the team. I like the players. Hey, it may not be what I'm used to, but I'll get used to it at some point. Hopefully you all get to that point. And if some of you don't, you have nothing to apologize for, because I completely understand why that feeling is so prevalent. I grew up on Harry Carey, and when Harry Carey passed baseball, because I watched with my dad growing up, it wasn't the same for either one of us. We used to love listening to Harry Carey and Steve Stone. And then when it was, Josh Lewin, it's no offense to Josh Lewin. Josh is a friend of mine, but it did not sound like the baseball that my father and I sat on the couch growing up and watching, So I get that feeling. I understand where it comes from, but hopefully at some point, you'll feel comfortable enough to flip it on and listen to it a little bit differently. Because Stacey was unique, man. Our broadcast was different than just about any other broadcast in the NBA, and that was wholly due to the guy sitting next to me, because he was the one-of-one unicorn type of TV personality, entertainer, analyst, basketball lifer, had the credibility, had the city behind him. Like, that's rare, man. And I know it's going to be hard. It's impossible to replace. And that's why I've said since his passing, we're not trying to replace him. It's just going to be different. That's just how it's going to be.
Yeah. I don't think you'll have too much problems with people still tuning in. As you can see from this chat, everybody is giving out love to you.
Yeah, definitely.
And you do a great job as well. So I don't see where people are going to be like, well, I'm not going to. It's still Adam and me.
No, I appreciate that. But I'm warning you though. Like, it'll be a little jarring. It's just going to be a little different, and it's not going to feel the same, and that's okay. I don't think it has to be a bad thing. I don't think it has to be a bad thing for it to be different, but I understand why it's going to be so jarring.
Yeah. Terry B is recommending Joakim Noah to sit in and call a game.
We loved having Joe sit next to us, man. Like the few times that anytime he would pop in, his energy, I think one of the games he came in, like the game turned around after he had sat down with us for a little bit. So we love Joe, man. And that's the other thing. I think it'll be opportunities to have some fun. And if Joe wanted to do it, I think the Bulls would say, hey, man, come on, we'll try it out, see how you feel. And if it doesn't work out or it's not his thing, so what? Like, I think there's opportunities here to get some new people or get some familiar voices that, maybe you're used to in other mediums or in other facets of basketball or broadcasting or whatever. I think it'll be a good opportunity to kind of just see something a little different, hear something a little different. And again, I know whoever the Bulls bring in, they'll have something. It might be something different. It will be something different, but they'll all have something, and we'll try to figure out what's the best way to have that come out so that you guys can enjoy the game and enjoy the broadcast.
See in the comments, Danny says, we're rocking with you, Adam, whatever it takes.
Appreciate all you, man.
Through you now, Adam. Still doesn't feel real. Just know that the city is behind you. You've embodied into our hearts, just like Stacey. Bulls Nation has your back. We grieve together. Melissa says, we love you, though, Adam. We're not going anywhere.
Right. Nowhere.
No, we appreciate you guys, man. Thank you.
What did Stacey teach you, not just about calling games, but more importantly, about life in general?
I mean, it certainly made me better as a broadcaster. Again, all the stuff that you guys talked about in terms of being on your toes and, hey, did he ever take it somewhere where you had to be, ready? Like it just kept you aware. And I would take those things that I learned working with Stacey. Again, I started full time with him when I started a new job. I went to Fox, and I was doing NFL on television for the first time, and I was doing Major League Baseball playoffs and things like that. And the skills that I could acquire by working with someone as unique as Stacey, who has a different level of energy and drives the broadcast in a different way, that you have to be flexible. You have to be malleable as a broadcaster. You have to be on your toes. And I would take that into the relationships I have with AJ Pierzynski and Adam Wainwright on baseball. I take that into working with Greg Olson or Mark Schlereth or Mark Sanchez or Daryl Johnston or now Drew Brees. Like, I work with a winner, man. I've worked with winners, and excuse me, Stacey's one of them. You know, he's a winner. He knew what it took, the effort, the acumen that it takes to win at a high level. And I can at least take those experiences, take the dexterity that he kind of allowed me to have and that I developed while working with somebody as unique as Stacey. And I've brought that into all my other broadcast relationships. And I hope it does seem to be the case, but I hope that my other partners feel that way too. Like, hey man, I can go anywhere and I know Adam's got my back. Cause that's how I felt with Stace. I was like, I never want to tell him, no, don't talk about that. You go where you want to go. My job is to back you, tag you, steer you back if need be. Like that was my job. And I think the people that I'm fortunate enough to work with on other sports and work with in other capacities, I think they felt that. And that was because of Stacey, you know, and he's the one I worked with the most. We were together, you know, every other night, basically for months at a time, working on TV and traveling together and all that. Like, you know, a lot of conversations. Anytime I had questions about navigating certain things, navigating this job, navigating the business side of the industry, like I said, meeting new people, introducing me to people that could impact my life in a positive way. Like, that's the type of stuff that he did for me too, not just broadcasting, but I mean, he taught me like about leadership. You know, he was a great example. He didn't lecture me. He wasn't like pulling me aside and be like, hey, you know, young blood, do this. Like, he wasn't doing that to me. It was through example, like how he treated people, how he made people feel, how he interacted with our crew. And that I would have followed that lead anyway, but to see him in the position that he was in, act accordingly, like that's respect, man. And I thought he was just a great role model in that regard to follow, whose example to follow.
Definitely. So one last Stacey question, and we'll wrap up the Stacey portion of the 23 questions. Stacey had a relationship with generations of Bulls players, coaches, broadcasters, fans. Was there anything you learned about Stacey after his passing through stories people shared that even you didn't know?
One of his Oklahoma teammates, who was from Los Angeles, told a great story during one of the services about how, you know, when this kid came to Oklahoma, and obviously Stacey being an Oklahoma guy, he, you know, it's a pretty big experience, you know, in the 1980s for a kid from LA to go out to, you know, Norman in a small town. The racial demographics are different. The pressure all of a sudden goes up because you're going to go play for a high level college basketball coach at a big time program. You know, the familiarity starts to hit, you know, and you have to deal with that. And I loved hearing the stories from his college teammates. Like, man, when we would go to Oklahoma, like Stacey would open his doors for us. He would let us stay at his house. You know, we got to know his mom and dad. You know, when we were out in LA, he would always make sure that, you know, when we'd go out together, he always had the restaurant for us and like made us feel like, you know, welcome in our own city. And again, that's a human thing. That's like how you serve people, how you take care of people in your life, you know, and I didn't know all those stories because again, he wasn't sitting there bragging about all the good things he's done in his life. He was there to entertain us. He would entertain us with like the crazy stuff that he did or like the silly stuff that he did, you know, as a kid growing up. You know, that was the entertaining part. He was trying to make you laugh. But like learning how his teammates felt about him because of how he served them as a person. You know, I think how we serve one another in this lifetime is really important. And it doesn't have to be big grand gestures all the time, and I think Stacey embodied that. He always wanted to do something small to make you feel comfortable, right? And then the same thing that we've said a couple of times about just how he'd make you feel in the middle of a conversation. That's a small thing, but it goes a long way. And that learning that after his passing, which again, not shocking at all, not surprising to me at all, but it still moves me emotionally. Like there's not much that gets me emotional in 2026, like just human decency and how kind he was to people and all that. Like that's going to be the thing that also sticks with me. And I didn't really know all of that as deeply as I do now until after he passed away.
Yeah, Stacey, definitely one. Guilty says, Adam, you're a beast. Never forget. That's why Stacey rocked with you. It was dope watching him warm up to you over the years. You earned his support because he respected you and loved you. Keep going.
I appreciate that.
Adam, you've called just about everything from NBA, NFL, MLB, college sports. Is there still a bucket list event you haven't called yet that you still are interested in doing?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, any broadcaster worth his salt or worth their salt wants to do the biggest game. Certainly all of us who work in the NFL want to call the Super Bowl one day. That's probably the ultimate goal. As I get further along in my career and I realize how much of this is kind of out of my control and out of our control in general, I try to focus less and less on the individual thing. Like when I was younger, it was, I want to call the NBA finals. I want to call the Super Bowl. I had specific things. And as I get a little older and a little further along and other things become more important to me in my life, other people become more important to me in my life, I realized like I don't have to do it to feel like I was successful in this industry. Like I used to put this line of demarcation where you had to do this event or this series or get to this point or whatever. Otherwise, like, why did you waste your time, doing this? And that was how like fine of a black and white line I had drawn on my mentality for a long time. And again, as I get older, it's like, that's not important to me anymore. What is important is getting to do the things that I get to do. I also understand that I say this from a position of privilege of someone who gets to call the NBA and MLB and NFL, et cetera. I get to do a lot of these cool events and games and sports, but I've also come to realize like, I just want to do the best job possible. I want to be really great at this so that if someone decides we need somebody to call the NBA finals, we need somebody to call the Super Bowl, does this person's contract line up with what, when like that's the other extenuating circumstance stuff that I can't help. Hey, I signed a deal. I'm going to live up to my deal. I can't go work for somebody else right now. I don't want to. When the time comes and they come to me and say, hey, we want you to do this because you'll have the opportunity to do the biggest game. All right, I'll probably end up hopefully going down that path. But I think just doing the best job possible now, every time I get a chance to put a headset on and call a game, I just want to do a great job. And hopefully when I look back in 20 years, I'll have called some great events or big events and that'll just be a byproduct of doing the job the right way.
Shout out to Chris, who says he wants to hear you call WWE. We hear the finished product every night, but what does an Adam Amin game day actually look like from the time you wake up to tip off?
I love a home game day. I love getting to do a game at the United Center. I don't live too far from there. It's it takes me about 15 minutes with a little traffic, 20 minutes at most to get over to the arena. So it's a nice, easy drive. During the day, and I've got my iPad here. So like this is, as you guys know, the prep process is pretty extensive. A little less so to call a bull, to call the Bulls because we call each game just about. But working on the opponent, I've always taken a lot of pride, and Stacey did too, of knowing our opponents, knowing who the Bulls are playing, knowing the players, knowing their stories, being able to talk intelligently about them. Because I think the NBA is a national league. pretty much. Like, people watch on League Pass all across the country, as we see in our chat, all across the world. Like, people watch League Pass, man. People watch our broadcast because they want to see the Bulls play, or we get the opponent's fans on League Pass watching our broadcast when the team is playing in Chicago. So we took a lot of pride in like trying to be as dialed in on opponents as well. So I'll show you guys what I would do on a game day. So I would make a chart for the opponent, opposing team, right? And all of this is info that I've worked on over time. Anything that's typed in there, like these are all stories and notes that I have on all these players. So, 17 MVP. This is Russell Westbrook. He was playing for Billy Donovan. I got statistical info on them over here. Their kind of vitals over here, just stuff that you can, their height, weight, all that stuff. And then what I write, like, again, it's digital, but like what I write down are like day-to-day things. So this was very early in the season. So here, this is what Russell Westbrook did in the last game that the Kings played. This is what he's averaging in the early part of the season, right? Domantas Sabonis, here's what he's did in the last game. This is his numbers in the early part of the season. I've got notes on like the organization down here. So these are Sacramento Kings notes, what they did last season, some info on them, 77 years in the NBA. They were in, Rochester to start their franchise, all that. So it's just info that I can always go back to. And the second time you play an opponent, you can go back to it and just update it. But that's what I'm typically doing. I'm reading as many stories as I can about the team that the Bulls are playing that night. I want to be up to date on what the latest happenings are, who's in, who's out, and then be able to talk intelligently about what the Bulls are doing. I read all the articles written by Joe Cowley and Julia Poe and Kyle Williams before he went to DC, and Darnell, and just what everybody writes. I'm following what they're writing. I pay attention to what the anchors and reporters are talking about, because that's what's important to you guys, and that's what's important to the Bulls, right now. So that's usually, somewhere between 4 and 6 hours of work that I'll try to start a little, earlier, maybe the night before. But I also have a database. I have notes on every player that I've covered for the last 10 years of doing the NBA. So I can always go back to some of my old stuff and take a look and see how it applies. But I'm trying to keep it as fresh as possible. I want to know what Jaylen Brown is going to be doing this offseason and apply that to when we call a Philadelphia 76ers game. And which is weird to say now, right? Like that with the changes that they've made. So, but like that's how we got to sounding like we were on top of it for not only what the Bulls are doing, but what the opponent does as well. So that's usually somewhere between 4 and 6 hours over the course of the previous night and that morning. All the reading. I try to read articles when I'm like on the treadmill or something, because it's important that I keep moving. So I'll do some prep on the treadmill just to get some exercise and all that. And then when we get to about 2, 3 in the afternoon, I'll go back over my notes. I'll type out a bunch of graphics that I think might work for the broadcast, and I'll send them to Tamara Anderson, who's our excellent graphics coordinator. She handles all that. So now I have full control and full understanding of like what we can go to. And then it becomes a collaborative effort over the course of the night as we get prepared for the game. I'll catch up with the other team's broadcasters, ask a couple of the guys or maybe some of the assistant coaches, hey man, what are you guys thinking about tonight? How do you take away DeMar or whatever? Like maybe you'll get a nugget. Players and coaches don't always give you like the game plan, but they might drop something in or drop in a story that you can use that night. And then, we get to about 30 minutes before game time. We go out onto the floor. We would record our open, sitting on the chairs and talking about the game that night. And then we were pretty much done until about 7:11. We would get, like 7:07 after the intros and all that stuff. And right around 7:10, 7:11, we're ready to go for tip. So that was the day, man.
There's a lot of the detail in planning. It definitely came off over the broadcast. You guys on top of your stuff. Kind of ironic that the example he showed was Russell Westbrook, as Danny.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shout out to Westbrook, who announced his retirement today.
That's right. Big time, man. He's one of my favorite players, legitimately to cover, one of my absolute favorite players. And I know he got kind of scapegoated in Los Angeles a little bit, but man, his teammates, the guys that played with him, absolutely loved him. Billy, when Billy was the head coach of the Bulls, he raved about his time with Russell. And I was always a big fan of how he carried himself and how he was off the court. Because from what I understand, off the court, he was like one of the best dudes around. So I was a big fan of him, and I wish him the best in his retirement.
Well, from a post-game perspective, do you ever go back and listen to your own calls, or once the game is over, you're completely done with it?
No, I still go back and listen. I try to listen back to the highlights just to make sure that we're hitting the points that we need to point or that we need to hit. I mean, the right way. I do that with all the games that I do, but I try not to dwell on it, and I try not to listen to it over and over because then I'll dwell on it. And the biggest thing is I'm just listening for mistakes or like improvements that I can make. I think just kind of know, like, when you call a game, you kind of remember if you mess something up or it's like, I could have done this a little bit better. So I try to go back and watch those moments. Part of it is like self-torture, but I think part of it is, it helps me think about something that I can do better for the next time out. And I think half the battle of solving your problems is at least acknowledging them and recognizing them and seeing what the issue might be. So if I'm aware that I'm using the same word too much, which is usually like one of the bigger problems that a lot of broadcasters have, they'll just use the same word because the same thing happens a lot in games. You're going to say the same words a lot. So it's about, all right, well, am I spreading it out a little bit? Am I using vocabulary that's fresh and that doesn't sound stagnant and stale? Am I setting Stacy up or whoever I'm working with? Like, am I setting my partner up? Am I putting them in good spots? Am I telling stories in a good way? Like, I'm trying not to stumble over anecdotes and stories that I want to tell. I want to tell them smoothly and in the flow of the game. So that's the type of stuff that I look for now when I'm going back and watching, but I don't go back and dwell on it like I used to, because when I was younger, I would dwell on every mistake I made.
Is there a call where you immediately knew, like, yeah, I nailed that
one? The thing is, there's always chances to go back. Like, if I could edit every call I've ever done to make it like tighter or use a better word or whatever, I would do it. I'm sure every broadcaster would, but that's a bad way to judge how you're doing it. And yeah, I've been fortunate, man. I've gotten better at this job. I think in the years that I've done it, I've improved in a lot of ways, and I still have a long way to go to get to where I want to go. But I think, like calling the women's Final Four and calling a buzzer beater to win a national title, I felt good about it. I think the DeMar DeRozan buzzer beater on New Year's Eve, I felt really good about that one. That's one of my favorite moments I've ever called in any sport in my whole career. Like getting to call like a buzzer beater like that for a player like that as well. The Giddey play, I don't even like that. I will think so fondly about that moment. I always have, like in the year and a half since it's happened, but now in particular with just the sequence of it and the back and forth of Stace and I, and that was unique to us. Like we would both be like, again, you're not going to overtake Stace on a call in terms of energy. Like I never wanted to do that, so I had to learn how to get in with him and kind of create like this dual call so that Josh Giddey buzzer beater and that the subsequent sequence, I feel like that was great. Like I have no regrets about it. I like the emotion of the moment. I like how he framed it, and I love what he said, and I like how I complimented him, and I don't think in the moment I was like, we got it, but I think afterwards it's like, hey man, we did that moment justice. That was fun.
Hey, DB, I need you to break out the give me the hot sauce hot take.
Oh, you got a hot take?
I got a hot take.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Give me 1 second to. All right.
The call made by Adam Amin and Stacey King on the Josh Giddey buzzer beater is the greatest call in Chicago Bulls broadcasting history.
Oh, wow.
It is. It is.
Man.
It's spectacular. Between what you and Stacey did, the way you complimented each other. Stacey's had some memorable ones, including the Derrick Rose over Goran Dragic.
Yeah.
Yes. But that one, collaboratively together, the best call in Bulls history. Man,
it's a very hot take, but I appreciate you throwing it out there, man. Like I knowing how I feel about it now, that means a lot, and I just it's a great memory, and I think at the end of the day, yeah, I could improve every call if I could go back in time and edit it or whatever. But I think, one of the things that I was taught early is that your call should reflect the emotion of the moment, not just the action that took place, right? It should be reflective of how you're feeling in the building and what the emotion in the moment was like. And that was a pure reflection of like how crazy that was. That's one of the wildest sequences I've ever witnessed in any sporting event, in particular in basketball. Those final 12 seconds to develop the way they did and for it to finish the way it did with the two teams that happen to be playing. It's Lakers, Bulls, a lot of buzz in the building. And yeah, I had people joke with me. It's like, you realize the Bulls were like 9 games under 500 after winning that game. And I was like, yeah. And it still felt like insane that's how that happened. So I appreciate you saying that, man.
Yeah, I stand with John on that. Like you said, we were 9 games under 500, but don't make everybody forget that we were. Would have thought we were contenders.
The shot itself was pretty amazing to see, but the voices behind that shot just made it extremely electric. It just brought chills watching that.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Myra in the chat is asking if you have any tips for anyone doing sports media for moving up in networking.
I think you just have to do it. Like I'm a firm believer that this is one of those 10,000 hours businesses, industries. Like the Malcolm Gladwell rule. Like you kind of have to do something for 10,000 hours to really feel like you can master it. And in that process, I think what a lot of people fail to say is that during that process, you'll corral people that believe in your ability as you grow towards a mastery of a craft. And I think the more you do something, the more often you're in that space, like you're calling. Like I got noticed in my career because I did it a lot. I called a lot of games. I never said no to an assignment. I didn't care if it was as a play-by-play announcer. I would take roles as a reporter. I would take roles as a producer, whatever I needed to do to get on a game so that I could learn what it's supposed to sound like or look like. That was a big deal to me. And I got better faster because I was just in that space all the time. And I'm sure anybody who's in any industry, especially in like one that might be more creative or might be in one that's that doesn't have like a linear path to it, right? Like if you want to go be a doctor, there's a linear path to that. It's, pre-med, med school, intern, residency, all that stuff. Like there's a real line of progression in that. You want to be a lawyer, law school, L1, L2, L3, paralegal, intern, etc. You eventually become an attorney. Like there's a line for that. There's no real pathway, I think, to like the creative fields. There's like there are a lot of blueprints and there's a lot of different ways to follow a path into an industry. But I think the more you're around it and in it, the more you'll get noticed. People will notice the work that you put into it. And I think you get out of most experiences what you put into those experiences. That's professionally, that's personally. I think that's the best advice I can possibly give in any line of work.
Brendan in the chat asked, "How good was the shipmates video from here in Australia of them doing you and Stacy's call, the getting
That was
bus?"
awesome.
That was so much fun. I'm so happy for those guys. They seem to be doing really well for themselves, but they were so kind. They were really cool. They got both me and Stace on on their podcast that year, that month, like later that month or something like that. So it was really fun to talk with those guys, and obviously, the international flavor with Josh doing that and having that moment, and it kind of spread around a little bit. So that was cool. That was awesome. And they were really good to us. So I appreciate them.
Myra says, "Thank you for that advice that you gave her." She
Of course.
appreciates
You've been doing this long enough that younger broadcasters, such as Amira, are now looking up to you. Aspiring announcer, I should say. Does that feel weird? How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's weird in the sense of I didn't really think about that being a thing that I would do, but I can appreciate it a lot. And I do love talking about this. I like talking about the job and the industry and the business. I like teaching younger people or aspiring broadcasters like what I know. I always clarify. It's like what I do isn't necessarily like how it's supposed to be done. I think what I did was follow the example of a lot of other people who did it, and that seemed to work. But I've thought about this job and this craft very deeply for a long time. So what I have learned and what I do, and a lot of it is just what I feel. Like I said, there's no one right way to do this job. I think there's a lot of right ways to do it. So the way I've done it is unique to me, but I think anytime you pass on knowledge, it can always be applicable in some form or fashion to somebody. And I've really enjoyed being able to pass along whatever knowledge I might accumulate and try to give that to as many people as I can.
definitely. After everything we've watched this franchise go through, how would you describe where the Bulls are right now?
In a much better place than they have been in the previous years. This was an overhaul that was necessary. I am really happy with obviously the way the draft went. I think they made the right type of moves. I'm not, like the right type of free agent moves and trades just to build around. Like you're trying to get veteran players who will handle what you need handled while the young guys are figuring out how to do this job. And, Modest is going into year 3. Giddey's going into a 3rd year with the organization. And then you got, Caleb Wilson, who's going to be expected to do a lot of things right out of the gate. He has seemingly very high expectations for himself, which I appreciate, and having interacted with him when he was in college in North Carolina. I hope that would be the case, and certainly that has been. So you're in a much, much better position now with younger players, guys that you can develop, guys that are looking for another opportunity. Nick Claxton may not be here in 2 years. That's fine. That's not the point of bringing Nick Claxton in. It's teaching younger players how to carry yourself and putting younger players who are becoming veterans into the position to now be leaders. And Norman Powell is certainly that type of person. He was a leader at UCLA. But he's never been the star of an NBA team. He's always been a secondary scorer. This past year, obviously, was like the best year of his career offensively because he was given the keys to a lot of moments and had to be a scorer. Now he gets to be a leader, and now he gets to set an example for younger guys. Nick Claxton was not the leader in Brooklyn, but he was a very good player who was learning how to play the game and learning how to utilize his skill set. And now he's going to be in a position where he's going to have to set an example for a lot of younger guys. Josh has kind of been in that position, the last couple of years. So I think Caleb is that type of guy, but he's young. He just has to see how it's done before he is able to take the reins of a franchise. So I think they've applied themselves properly. I think they drafted who they should have drafted. I'll be curious about Dalen Swain and all that. Like I'm a little, not concerned, but yeah, I watched Summer League, and it's like, oh yeah, he had his struggles, and we're gonna have to figure out what kind of role he's gonna play. But the main thing was Caleb Wilson. Who is he? How do you utilize him? How do you make him feel like he is a star to be? And I think already, based off of what's happened in Summer League and some of the people I've talked to, he is that type of person and player, and that's a good sign for things to come if that's a player that you want to build around.
What excites you most about this current group going into the season?
I think, like I said, just the youth that they're leaning into. You know, Caleb is this is the first like high level, highly touted prospect that was drafted by the Bulls where he probably would have been slotted. Like we look back at Modest now, like that draft a few years ago in 24, like he'd probably be one of the first 3 guys taken now instead of getting picked where he got picked. Obviously, Stephon Castles had a fantastic first couple of years in the league, but like Modest would probably be one of the first guys picked if you redrafted it, right? But Caleb Wilson went right where he was supposed to go, and the Bulls happened to be there. Like you got a legitimate top 5 pick in the top 5 of a draft. So that's still the most exciting thing. Watching his development, telling his story, that's what excites me the most. Modest and Josh are the next things that I'm pumped about because I want to see what the next stage is for Modest's development. New head coach, obviously, so it's going to be a different style of play. I think Josh has probably earned himself the leeway and respect and reputation to be a ball handler. I think Norman Powell is probably a really good complement to that, not necessarily having a ball dominant point guard like Josh is. He wants to pass. He wants to distribute. And now he's got options in a lot of different facets of the floor. So I think those are probably the things like that stick out the most to me that I'm excited to see how they develop over the course of the next several months.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously excited about Caleb. What you've seen from afar, and what are you most interested in seeing from him when you get to call his games?
So when I called one of his games at North Carolina, the biggest thing that stuck out was how he moved in the open floor at 18 at the time. So the game I called was North Carolina, Michigan State. And Michigan State was like all veteran guys, all guys that were like 21, 22, 23. They were all, juniors and seniors or redshirt seniors. So those are grown men or at least further grown men that he was going up against. And the way he moved with great handles at his size, he's obviously long and lanky, but he had actual handles and ability. He had a bag already. Like he had a back to the basket game. He had open floor game. He had ability to move around smaller players. Wasn't perfect by any means, but I thought that the skill set he already had was beyond some of the other players that I had watched in college. Like I thought he already had a better skill set than Cam Boozer. I thought he, at his position, I enjoyed watching him a little bit more than some of the other guys that went a little lower in the draft. And I walked away thinking, again, this is early in the Bulls season. This is around Thanksgiving. So I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh, man, I hope the Bulls get hit. It's not even a thought in my head right at that point. Yeah. I just went, man, I think he's going to be a really good player. And then he got hurt like in, I think, February. And, I don't think a lot of people, like the number of people that typically, see one of these types of players was a lot lower because he didn't play in the tournament because he got hurt. Because in the tournament, that's when you start to go, oh, this guy, this guy's good. Oh, that guy's really good. Like that just happens. It didn't happen for Caleb, and obviously North Carolina didn't make a very deep run this year either. So there wasn't a lot of discussion about him during the NCAA tournament. Once you got into the draft process, I just remembered thinking, man, that'd be the Bulls. Maybe if they do get a higher pick, that'd be a great guy to have. And I said that to Stacy in December when I came back from having seen his college stuff. I'm like, Stace, I think this guy's going to be legitimately good. I said it on air, multiple times. And I said, I'm biased. I've seen him in person. I've talked to the kids. So naturally I'm going to have an inclination to feel positive about him. But all those things I saw in college, and I hope that we'll get a good taste of that as a rookie. He did show off a little bit of that during the summer league too, which is great.
Yeah, I know. Kendall Gill said if Caleb had not gotten hurt, that he would have been the number 1 pick.
So I think it would have been still based off of necessity for organizations, but I easily could have seen him going number 3 to Memphis, and I easily could have seen Utah go out of their way to go grab him as well. I did feel like I think everybody felt DeBanso was going to be the number 1 pretty much from about December on, but I could have seen Caleb going. I was legitimately nervous. I wanted him to drop the 4, and I was thankful that he did because I just thought he as a fit, he was great. And this is one of those drafts, as was discussed ad nauseum, where your top 4 is your top 4, right? You can get any one of these guys and feel good about who you're drafting. Now, obviously, it has to play out. They have to stay healthy. They have to learn. They have to develop, and they have to play well. But what are you going to like at the draft? You have to pick the best player. And I thought the Bulls picked exactly who they should have picked. And I'm glad that it ended up being Caleb Wilson.
Yeah, we're definitely hyped to get Caleb. Daddy in the chat is asking, outside of broadcasting and DJing, what are some of your hobbies? Do you hoop, golf, fish?
The DJing is the hobby, that I decided I wanted to spend whatever free time I had on this thing. But the rest of the time, man, I'm fortunate. I've got my most of my family is still in the suburbs or in the city. I have so many friends here, obviously growing up here, and I've had friends move to Chicago. My partner moved here a couple of summers ago, and her and her son, are big parts of my life. So I love that takes up my time. That's my family. So like just hanging out with family, hanging out with friends, being able to DJ on the side. But the rest of the time I'm working. Like I had a very low work summer. Like I was a pretty light summer in terms of a work schedule. So it was nice to take that time off and it was the most time off I've really had in my career during the summer. Just the way the World Cup, there was World Cup, so I wasn't doing as much baseball because the network that I work for had it. So, all these different reasons, but I do love to travel. We went to Italy this past summer as well for our friend's wedding and got to spend time out there. So I'm fortunate to get to do stuff like that. But the rest of the time, I'm usually, my head's buried in a laptop or my iPad or writing down baseball notes right now, or, we're getting ready for the Bears preseason to start this weekend. So I'm neck deep right now in Luther Burden notes, as I'm getting ready for the Bears season and reading about the Cleveland Browns because that's who the Bears are playing. So now it starts. Like I got back to work a couple of weeks ago with baseball, and it's pretty much nonstop from now until the end of the basketball season for me.
Yeah. When you mentioned when they called the Super Bowl, there was a lot of bear downs in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
Terry B is asking, Cubs or Sox?
I grew up a Cub fan because my father was a Cub fan. He worked different shifts when he first came to the U.S. He worked in a factory, and he would work different shifts. But usually, like when he got his lunch break, he would just watch Cubs games on WGN. So he became a Cub fan in the late 70s when he first came to the States. He was a cricket player in Pakistan, so naturally he gravitated towards baseball. So he was a Cub fan. I was a big baseball player. I loved baseball growing up, still do. So that was my team. But I grew up going to Sox games. It was so funny. Like I just interviewed Ozzie Guillen we did the Cubs game 2 Saturdays ago. I did the White Sox game this past week for Fox, and we got to interview Ozzie. And Ozzie was one of the first baseball players I ever met. I still have a photo somewhere in the archives of meeting Ozzie and Lance Johnson, One Dog, the center, the great center fielder for the Sox. So, I went to as many Sox games as I could. It was cheaper, just as a straight up, it was cheaper. I could afford to go to more Sox games growing up. But I love the Cubs will always be like the first baseball team I loved because my dad loved them. Once they won the World Series in 2016, I was already covering Major League Baseball. I'd been covering it for 4 seasons. And I think once they won the World Series, my dad got to watch them win it and then like a year and a half later is when he passed away. So like I always felt like sated, like satisfied as a baseball fan once the Cubs won the World Series, because I got to see my dad watch them win it. I was on the phone with him when they won it. So I felt like I don't have as much deep rooted baseball fandom anymore, mostly because I cover it at such a high level. But I grew up a Cub fan. I loved going to Sox games. I go to more Sox games now just because the Reinsdorf connection, and like I just end up at more Sox games during the summer. But I love going to games at both parks, and I was so happy that we got to go back to both parks these last 2 weekends, and call games, because like there's nothing that makes me happier to be able to call a baseball game here, whether it's Cubs or Sox. So I love it.
Back to our rookie, Caleb Wilson, a.k.a. C-Dub, a.k.a. 8-Ball. He said he wants to be called 8-Ball. So
I love that.
I think that's pretty cool, right?
I think Stacy would have leaned into that. He would have. I can already hear 8-Ball corner pocket somehow.
That's
like
it.
I can already kind of like hear Stacy's voice with that, man. Yeah, I like that a lot.
No doubt. What's your expectation for him? He says he's going to be Rookie of the Year.
I listen. I wouldn't put it past them. This is a really talented rookie class. You could make a case for any of these rookies to be good enough to win the award. I think he's got real all rookie team potential. I think he's got the right attitude. He's going to struggle at some point, and I'm going to guess it's going to be about 35 to 45 games in, because for every 18, 19-year-old kid that comes into the NBA, you hit the wall. You hit it hard too. Not only do you only play about 35 to 40 games in a deep college season, like when you make a deep run in the tournament, you're only playing, somewhere between 35 and 40 games, or 30 and 40 games. Those games are spread around. Like you play Tuesday and Saturday, like in the Big Ten, like you might play Wednesday and Sunday in the ACC. Yo, man, you're going back to back against Miami and Milwaukee the next 2 nights on the road, and you're not getting into Miami until 3 a.m. Like that this is real. Like the body hangover and the physical effects that it takes, the toll that it takes is real. He is going to have a really bad stretch, just like AJ DeBanza will, just like Cooper Flagg did. His came a little bit earlier. Just like every rookie struggles at some point or another, he'll have it. I think he's got the right attitude and mentality and skill set to where he'll figure out how to get over that rookie wall. I'm sure the All-Star break will be a great time for him as well. And I imagine that during All-Star break, he's going to be involved in all rookie team stuff, or, Rising Stars game, whatever it might end up being. I think he'll be there. I think he'll be participating in these things. I think he's going to be somewhere in an all rookie voting scenario at the end of the season. And I am really excited for him to get challenged, because he's always been able to live up to whatever challenge he's been thrown for the last, year at North Carolina. He got challenged by some of the best players in the country. He lived up to the challenges before he got hurt. So his mentality is great. I think physically he's going to hit a wall, and then I think he's smart enough and talented enough to figure out how to get past that.
Yeah, he definitely seems to have like that MJ mentality where he uses challenges to motivate him. Mm-hmm. So definitely can see him. Of course, he's going to hit the rookie wall, but definitely can see him being able to recover from it. Is there any player on the roster as it currently stands that you think Bulls fans aren't talking about enough?
Yeah, because the conversations typically have been around Caleb, Josh Giddey, Modest, obviously. I want to see Zach Collins have a healthy season. He's gonna be an important piece to this team as a veteran. I'm sure he'll be in the rotation of spelling either or Claxton and Wilson, at the 4 and 5 positions. So, I think he's a great vet add. It was disappointing that he was hurt for as much of the season as he was last year, because I think he really brings something to this group. So I think he's a really important player. I'm trying not to put too much into Noah Esenge, because I know like a lot of people said that, he's grown. He's like 6'11". He's trying to put on some muscle. I'm not trying to put a lot of pressure on him. I can't suddenly be like, well, another year in a different regime. Like, I don't want to play it like that. I think that's too much pressure to add. And I think he's still a year or two away from being a major contributor. I think Okoro is interesting still as he develops as an offensive player. Obviously, he's got a great defensive reputation. And then I really want to see how Norman Powell does here. I think, I think he's a good person to have in that locker room, and I want to see how they use him, especially when the offense gets stagnant, because that's always been the issue. And I think Modest started to take the reins of that a little bit when the team would get stagnant offensively. I think people relied on him. I will be curious to see how Norman is, how he fills that role of like, quick spark on the offensive side.
Shout out Ramina. She says she heard Zach and got excited.
I understand. I know. We know our friend well. So
you've called a lot of great moments in your career, but as a Bulls broadcaster, what's that one moment that you are still itching to call? The moment that hasn't come yet.
I mean, the disappointing thing about what the NBA is doing now is that we don't get to call playoff games on the local side anymore. This past season was the first year that local broadcasts did not call playoffs. So until a new rights deal comes up, or if they ever make any changes to it, like, that's the one I'd like to call. I'd love to call a playoff series victory for the Bulls. It just won't happen on the local broadcast. So, that's disappointing. So I think, getting back to calling meaningful basketball late in the year at the United Center, and not just for a play-in spot, but like to be like a top level seed, or to clinch a spot in one of the top six. I'd like to call meaningful basketball, and I think we will. I think we'll have that opportunity in the next couple of years to call legitimately meaningful basketball in March and April. That matters to get to the playoffs. So even if we don't get to call any playoff games locally anymore, I still think it's important that, we get to see life in the United Center in March and April again for bigger games, not just hey, they're playing Atlanta or Miami in the play-in and it's the 9-10 game or whatever. Like, I want to see a game 7. I want to see, a legitimately well-played playoff series that ends at the United Center with the Bulls win. And I'd love to see that. And obviously we'd like to call the games that lead up to that.
Reached final question number 23. What would it take for this team, or at the end of the season, for you to walk away and say that was a successful year for the Chicago Bulls?
I think it matters what Wilson, Buzelis, and Giddey looked like by the end of the season. I think if they look a certain way, meaning Josh is right around double-digit assists per game, Buzelis is shooting closer to a 50-40-90 split. Again, I'm not asking for him to be a 40% three-point shooter, but I think if you can get him to 48, 38, and 85, that's a big jump for him. I want to see the free throw attempts for Modest go up. I want to see Caleb have real opportunities to score the ball in tight situations. So it's not necessarily a real tangible thing that I think would be a success. Obviously, I'd love to see them like shock everybody. It's a weird conference. The top of the East is suddenly way more competitive. Philly is going to be fascinating. Miami with Giannis is going to be fascinating. Boston post Brown, but with Tatum and George, and like, what do they look like? The Knicks are obviously fantastic. After coming off a title, like, the top of the East is really, really strong. Who's the 5th or 6th best team? And if somehow the Bulls ended up in that mix, like, that would be a great surprise. It would be a surprise for sure, but it'd be a great and pleasant surprise. I would love for this team to do what Charlotte did last year. Making the play-in with this roster is not supposed to feel the same as making the play-in 3 of the last 4 years that the Bulls did, right? That roster was almost built for the play-in, unfortunately, and I hate to say it that way, but like, it eventually became a play-in roster. And the injuries certainly had a major factor in that too. This is a roster that's not built for the playoffs. It's built to improve the younger players' standing in this league, get them better, get them improving. So I would love if this team could get into the play-in conversation the way Charlotte did last year and made an impact, and those young guys who'd been together for a little while came together to like have an exciting run. Even if I don't care what happens after that, but if you're competing for a play-in spot with this roster, I think that's a strong season. I think if you're developing Caleb, Modest, and seeing where Josh is on the next step, both offensively and defensively, if they've made improvements in those runs, then I think that's a really successful season.
Yeah, definitely agree. Like the play in with this team it would be welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unlike the other years, like, to play in again. But yeah, this roster, we're like, okay, it is a step in the right direction.
Absolutely, it is.
Well, yeah. Thank you, Adam, for coming on and doing these 23 questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, guys. No problem. And like I said, it's a pleasure to get back with you guys and reminisce. And, you know, it's some good dinners. We'll have to do that on the road one of these days, especially when we make our time back into DC. But I just appreciate you guys, man, and for your kindness and for your affection and the love and your friendship, man. Thank you guys so very much.
Thank you, man. You know where you'll be next weekend for Bulls Fest. We'll be in town, but you might have something, an NFL game to call or something.
We got Bears preseason, so I'll unfortunately be. I think we're going to Cincinnati the weekend of Bulls Fest, where the Bulls or the Bears are playing at home this weekend, and then they're in Cincinnati during a Bulls Fest weekend. But yeah, man, we're back in it. We're back in the grind, and you know, it'll be basketball season before we know it. Just a couple months away.
Yep. Once again, thank you for coming on, Adam.
Yes, sir.
Bulls Nation loves you, Adam. We love you.
Man, much love. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you. And to the next time, Bulls Nation, drive home safe to Chicago. Beep, beep.